My mother-in-law forced me to do a DNA test, but falsified the results. Now my husband does not believe me. I held the paper in my hands. My husband looked at me without emotion. The test says I'm not the father, he said. His voice was steady. You cheated on me. I did not cheat. I knew that. But the paper in his hands told him otherwise. His mother stood behind him. She did not look surprised. She was waiting for this moment. I knew she had done something. I just did not know how from the moment they met. His mother disapproved. Her attitude was polite but distant, her questions careful but laced with judgment. She paid close attention to every detail, background, family, career, and dismissed each one as insufficient. In her eyes, there was nothing impressive about a middle-class woman with an average job. She had always imagined a different future for her son, one that did not include a wife like me. For years, she had expected him to marry Emma, the daughter of a longtime family friend. Emma came from wealth, had a strong career in finance, and carried herself with confidence. She was well-mannered, intelligent, and deeply admired by his mother. But more importantly, she had always wanted to be with him. The two had never dated, but that did not matter. His mother believed it was only a matter of time before they ended up together. The engagement disrupted those expectations. His mother was furious when she found out, treating it as an impulsive decision rather than a commitment. She refused to be involved in the wedding preparations and insisted she would not attend. For weeks, she distanced herself, making it clear she would not support the marriage. In the end, she came, but only as an observer. She sat stiffly in the back, barely acknowledging the ceremony. There was no warmth, no kindness, no effort to welcome me into the family. When photos were taken, her expression remained unchanged. When the reception began, she remained quiet, offering no congratulations. The night ended without a single moment of sincerity from her. After the wedding, she remained distant, but her disapproval continued in subtle ways. She never directly insulted me, never started arguments, never made dramatic scenes. Instead, she compared. Every conversation found a way to highlight how much better Emma was. If Emma achieved something at work, it was mentioned. If she traveled, it was worth bringing up. If she purchased something expensive, it was a reminder of what true success looked like. Nothing was said outright, but the message was clear. A mistake had been made, and she had no intention of pretending otherwise. For the first 2 years of marriage, the pattern continued. His mother never crossed any lines that could be openly challenged, but her disapproval lingered in every conversation, every visit, every carefully chosen remark. There was no change, no progress, no acceptance. She tolerated the marriage, but she never respected it. Then, the pregnancy changed everything. The pregnancy was unexpected. The moment his mother found out, everything shifted. There was no excitement, no celebration, no acknowledgement of the news as something positive. Instead, there was immediate doubt. Her reaction was not one of joy but suspicion. She questioned everything, how it happened, when it happened, whether it was real at all. There was no interest in the health of the baby or in preparations for the new addition to the family. The focus was on something else entirely, whether the child could truly belong to her son. She accused me of infidelity. She framed it as concern rather than an attack, but the implication was clear. There was no reason, no evidence, nothing to justify the claim, yet she spoke with certainty. She believed I had trapped him. In her mind, there was no other explanation for why he would have stayed with someone she had never approved of in the first place. Her persistence grew. She reached out to extended family, making sure they heard her version of events before they had a chance to form their own opinions. She spread doubt through quiet remarks and carefully placed questions. Every interaction with her became tense. Every conversation felt like a test. At first, my husband dismissed it. He refused to entertain the idea, refused to acknowledge her claims. He told her she had crossed a line, told her she had no right to make accusations against me. But she did not stop. The hostility increased. It was no longer just about the pregnancy. It was about me, about my character, about whether I had ever been worthy of being part of their family. She called my loyalty into question, picking apart small details and turning them into something sinister. Her pressure became unbearable. My husband had always been patient with her, always willing to overlook her behavior, always willing to believe she would come around in time. But this time, it was different. He was angry. He made a choice. He cut her off completely. There were no more visits, no more calls, no more attempts at maintaining a relationship. She was not welcome in our lives. She blamed me. She believed I had turned him against her, that I had manipulated him into shutting her out for the first time since our engagement. She was silent for months. There was no contact. There was no interference, no comparisons, no lingering sense of disapproval. It was peaceful. I allowed myself to believe it would last. Then, in the final month of my pregnancy, my husband had an accident. Everything changed. The accident happened late in the evening. My husband was driving home from work when another driver ran a red light and crashed into his car. The impact was severe. He was rushed to the hospital, unconscious, with multiple fractures and internal injuries. The doctor said he needed immediate surgery. His recovery would take months. I was alone. The stress of the pregnancy was already overwhelming, but now I had to prepare for childbirth without him. The thought of going through labor while he lay in a hospital bed, unable to be there, terrified me. I spent days going back and forth between home and the hospital, speaking with doctors, waiting for updates, hoping he would wake up soon. His mother saw this as an opportunity. She had been quiet for months, but once she heard about the accident, she stepped back into our lives without hesitation. She arrived at the hospital, acting as if nothing had ever happened between us. She spoke to the doctors, introduced herself as the primary family member, and made sure she was the one receiving all updates about my husband's condition. She treated me like an outsider, like someone with no authority over my own husband's care. At first, I tried to ignore her presence. I was exhausted. My body was preparing for childbirth, and my mind was consumed with worry for my husband. I had no energy left to fight her. She must have sensed this because, little by little, she started pushing further. She told me it would be best if I stayed with her while my husband recovered. She framed it as an act of kindness, saying I would need help in the final weeks of my pregnancy. She told me she could take care of everything: food, rest, emotional support, so I wouldn't have to handle everything alone. I was hesitant, but I had no other options. My husband was in no condition to be there for me, and I had no close family nearby. I moved into her house. It was a mistake. First, she played the role of the concerned mother-in-law, offering to cook for me, making sure I rested. But it did not take long for the small remarks to start again. She reminded me how much her son had loved her before I came along. She talked about how close they used to be before I separated them. She spoke about how she had always known he would regret shutting her out. Then Emma started visiting my husband in the hospital. His mother made sure I knew. She would casually mention how nice it was that Emma was stepping up in my absence. She spoke about how much my husband had always trusted Emma, how much history they shared, how she had always been there for him. It was clear what she was doing. She was trying to make me feel insecure, trying to plant doubt in my mind. Mindy told myself I was just imagining it. But as the days passed, she became bolder. She openly praised Emma, saying it was good for my husband to have someone stable around him while he healed. She questioned whether I should even visit him, saying the stress of seeing him like that might not be good for the baby. She created distance, making sure I felt like an outsider in my own marriage. Then she told me my husband wanted a DNA test. She said he had confided in her, that he had been thinking about it ever since the pregnancy was announced. She said he didn't want to tell me himself because he was afraid of hurting me, so he asked her to handle it. I believed her. I agreed to take the test. I didn't know then that I was walking into a trap. The request for a DNA test did not surprise me. His mother had spent months planting doubts, and with my husband in the hospital, vulnerable and recovering, she had the perfect opportunity to manipulate him. She told me he wanted the test, but did not want to stress me by asking directly. She made it sound like a simple request, something that would put his mind at ease. I agreed. I wanted to prove her wrong. I wanted the accusations to end. She arranged everything. She told me she had already spoken to a clinic and that all I needed to do was provide a sample. I had no reason to suspect anything. I was exhausted, days away from giving birth, and I trusted that she was telling the truth about my husband's request. She took me to the clinic, watched as I provided the sample, and assured me the results would be sent directly to my husband. But that was never her plan. She never took the sample to a real lab. She had already decided what the results would say. She had them forged, replacing the real report with a falsified one that stated my husband was not the father. Then she brought the fake results to him. I wasn't there when she showed him the document. I didn't get to defend myself. I didn't get to see the look on his face when he read the words that shattered his trust in me. But I knew the moment it happened. The phone call stopped. For days, I had been visiting the hospital whenever I could, balancing my exhaustion with my determination to be there for him. But after she gave him the false report, everything changed. He stopped responding to my messages. When I arrived at the hospital, I was told he wasn't up for visitors. His mother started answering his phone, saying he needed time to process what he had learned. I was blocked out. She had one. I was still living under her roof when I realized what she had done. At first, she acted as if nothing had changed. She pretended to still be concerned about my pregnancy, still offered me meals, still reminded me to rest. But there was something different in the way she looked at me. She no longer seemed annoyed by my presence. She seemed satisfied. Then, without warning, she handed me the fake results. She placed the paper in front of me and said my husband had seen them, that he knew the truth now, that it was best if I accepted the reality of the situation. I looked at the document, my mind struggling to process what I was reading. I knew it was a lie. I knew it. But there it was, written in cold, clinical terms. He was not the father. Before I could react, she told me to leave. She no longer needed to pretend to tolerate me. She had gotten what she wanted. My husband believed her. I was alone. I had no choice. I packed my things and left. The next time I heard about my husband, it wasn't from him. It was from others, people who told me that Emma had been visiting him every day, that she was staying by his side, comforting him, that his mother had practically replaced me with her. I had just given birth when I realized my marriage was over. I gave birth alone. There was no husband by my side, no reassuring hand to hold, no comforting words to get me through the pain. The hospital staff was kind, but they were strangers. The room felt empty. My son came into the world without his father there to welcome him. I tried to call my husband after the birth, but he did not answer. His mother had made sure there was no way for me to reach him. She had cut me off completely. The reality of my situation settled in quickly. I had nowhere to go. I had left my job late in the pregnancy, planning to take time off before returning. My savings were limited. I had no family nearby. My husband had been my support system, and now he was gone. I stayed in a small rental for the first few weeks, using what little money I had to survive. I sent messages to my husband, hoping he would respond. I told him about our son's birth, about how he looked just like him, about how he deserved to know the truth. He never replied. Instead, I heard from others what I was not allowed to hear from him. His mother had convinced him that I was a liar, that the baby was not his, that I had betrayed him. She had filled his mind with enough doubt that he refused to even see the child. Meanwhile, Emma had stepped into my place. She was at his side during his recovery. She was the one his mother welcomed into the family. It became clear that they wanted me erased from his life. I could not accept that. I had spent months being accused, insulted, and manipulated. I had been thrown out of my own home, forced to give birth alone, and denied the chance to even prove the truth. I had done nothing wrong, and I refused to let my son grow up without a father because of his grandmother's lies. I decided to take another DNA test. This time, I did everything myself. I went to a certified clinic, provided my sample and my son's, and made sure that no one else could interfere. I waited for the official results, the proof that I had never needed but now had to fight for. When I received them, there was no surprise. The truth had never changed. The test confirmed, without question, that my husband was the father. Now, I had proof, and I was going to make sure he saw it. Holding the real DNA test results in my hands gave me a sense of power I had not felt in months. It was undeniable proof that my husband had been manipulated, that his mother had lied, that I had been thrown away based on a falsehood. But having the truth and getting him to accept it were two different things. I had no direct way to reach him. My calls and messages still went unanswered. His mother controlled access to him, making sure I stayed cut off. But I refused to let that stop me. If I could not get to him through messages, I would find another way. I sent copies of the results to his email, knowing he might not check it. I mailed them to the hospital where he had been recovering, hoping he would receive them before his mother could interfere. I even reached out to mutual friends, asking them to get the documents to him. Days passed with no response. Then, I received a message from him. It was brief. A single sentence. "We need to talk." The next day, we met in person for the first time since everything had fallen apart. He looked different, thinner, more tired, like someone who had been carrying too much weight on his shoulders. He had believed for months that his wife had betrayed him, that his child was not his, that his life had been ripped apart. I handed him the DNA results. I watched as he read them, his face shifting from doubt to confusion, then to something deeper. He read the document twice. His hands clenched the paper as the reality settled in. His mother had lied. She had destroyed his family, manipulated him when he was weak, and convinced him to abandon his wife and child. She had taken advantage of his pain to push me out and replace me with someone she had always wanted for him. He asked me how I had gotten the test, when I had done it, why I had waited so long to send it to him. I told him the truth. I had not waited. I had been fighting to reach him from the beginning. It was his mother who had kept him from seeing the truth. Silence stretched between us as he processed everything. Then, he asked the one question I had been waiting for. "Where's our son?" For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to feel hope. The first time he saw our son, he hesitated. He stood in the doorway, his eyes fixed on the small baby in my arms. He did not move closer at first. He just stared. I watched as realization settled over him. The doubts, the accusations, the months of believing a lie, none of it mattered in that moment. Our son was real, and he was his. He sat down slowly, still quiet, still processing. I placed our son in his arms, and for the first time, I saw something break in him. He looked down at the child he had been told was not his, the child he had refused to see, and I could see the guilt taking over. He stayed that way for a long time, holding his son, letting it sink in. Then, he spoke. He told me he was sorry, that he had let himself be controlled, that he had doubted me when he never should have, that he had let his mother manipulate him when he was at his weakest. That he admitted everything. His mother had been relentless, pushing him to believe her, keeping him isolated, controlling who could reach him. When Emma started visiting, he had not thought much of it at first, but his mother had insisted she was just there to help, to be a friend, to be someone he could trust. He had spent months being fed a version of events that had never been true, and he had believed it. But now, with the proof in front of him, with his son in his arms, he knew what had to be done. He cut ties with his mother. It was not an easy decision for him. She had always been controlling, but he had still believed she wanted the best for him. Now he saw her for what she really was, manipulative, selfish, willing to destroy his family to get what she wanted. He told her she was no longer a part of his life, that she would never see her grandson, that she had taken away time he could never get back. She did not take it well. She denied everything, claimed I had somehow faked the results, accused me of turning him against her. But it did not matter anymore. He had made his choice. Our family was whole again. But even as we tried to move forward, I could not forget what had happened. He had doubted me. He had left me alone when I needed him the most. And now, I had to decide if I could forgive him. Forgiveness was not immediate. The damage his mother had caused ran deep, but so did the choices he had made. He had abandoned me when I needed him most. He had believed the worst about me without even looking me in the eyes to ask for the truth. He had allowed himself to be manipulated, and because of that, I had gone through my pregnancy and childbirth alone that I did not want to rush into pretending everything was fine. Trust had been broken, and trust takes time to rebuild. At first, we focused on our son. He made an effort to be there, to make up for lost time. He stayed up with me for late-night feedings, changed diapers, and held him every chance he got. He was trying. I saw that. But it did not erase what had already happened. That we talked about everything. He did not try to make excuses. He did not shift the blame. He admitted that he had been weak, that he had let his mother control him, that he had not fought hard enough for me when it mattered. He told me he hated himself for it. I wanted to hold on to my anger, to punish him for what he had done. But the truth was, I still loved him. That love had not disappeared, even after everything. And I could see that he truly regretted it, that he wanted to make things right. Forgiveness came slowly, not in one big moment, but in small ones. In the way he looked at our son with pure devotion. In the way he apologized without expecting anything in return. In the way he did not push me to move faster than I was ready for. In the end, I forgave him. We moved forward, together. His mother remained cut off from our lives. Emma faded into the background, no longer the person his mother had tried to push into my place. The life we had built before everything fell apart did not return overnight, but we built it again, piece by piece. Now, I look at my son, and my husband, at the life we have fought for, and I know I made the right decision, but I still think about what happened. And I wonder, if I had never taken that second DNA test, if I had never fought to prove the truth, would he have ever come back? Would he have ever realized what his mother had done? Or would he still believe the lie? Even though we have moved on, I still struggle with what happened. Part of me wonders if I should have made him fight harder to get me back. I don't know if I'll ever truly trust him the way I once did. Has anyone been through something similar? Can trust ever be fully repaired after something like this? I don't regret forgiving him, but I do wonder, was I too easy on him?